The thing that you fear most is your own greatness and owning that greatness. And this is your greatest challenge. The vast, vast majority of people, according to Mr. James, and I believe this, live far below the limits of their capacity. You can do incredible things. You can have an enormous impact on the people around you. You can do things that are far, far beyond your imagination. But you need to get going.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis podcast with Chip Conley, where we explore how midlife isn't a crisis, but a chrysalis, a time of profound transformation that can lead to the most meaningful chapter of your life.
Chip Conley, I'm here. I just got off this episode with David Stewart, who is maybe one of the best known photographers in the world, who in midlife realized that he wanted to study ageism. And he was famous in the advertising industry. And then he said, this industry is ageist. So he created something called Ageist, and then he created something called Super Age. And he's one of the biggest thought leaders in the world on the topic of how do we live our lives in our 50s and beyond, especially focused on the physical side of things. So while many of my podcast episodes focus on the emotional and the spiritual side, this one was very focused on the physical, especially on longevity. And so for those of you out there who are a little curious about some hacks that are going to help you with your longevity and living a longer, healthier, happier life, I think you'll enjoy this episode. Well, hello, David.
Hey, Jeff, good to see you.
Where are you? Where are we catching you? Are you in LA or in Miami or in?
Behind me, that's the East River. So I'm in Manhattan.
You're in Manhattan. Okay. That's not a virtual background. That is.
That boat there is moving. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It is. You were in New York a long time, weren't you? Originally.
Yeah. I came here as basically a kid in 78. And then I moved back here. Then I went to school for a while. Then I came here, I think in 84. And I was here for a long time. I guess about 30 years or so, like kind of off and on. I did some time in Miami, some time in Paris, but basically here. And then I did a stint in LA, and now I'm back here.
Well, and you had a little Park City time there too, didn't you?
There was that sort of COVID, weird, I got marooned in this ski resort, which I thought was a couple of weeks, and I was there for 4 years.
Well, and that was during that time, to give some background on our relationship. You and I did a happy hour. So we were all stuck at home. And I think it was your suggestion, let's do, you had an online magazine, online community called Ageist, and we had MEA. And frankly, MEA was not in business. We didn't have any people coming to our campuses. And so we had Norma Kamali and Danny Meyer, the restaurateur, and just, we had some fun with that. But yeah, tell us, I'd love to have you give us the origin story of David, because I really actually don't know. I know for 40 years or so, you have been a very famous commercial photographer. Your client list is like the Fortune 500 companies of the world. But I don't know the origin story of who you grew up as and how did you end up in that path. Yes. So we're going to go back there. And I know this is just so everybody knows, David doesn't love Chip being the psychologist here. I promise you, I will not do too much psychology.
Okay, so I grew up in upstate New York. My parents divorced when I was about 12. I was about 12, I want to say. So it was 1970, which is kind of a weird, that just didn't happen then. And then my mom and my brother and myself moved to a little town south of Rochester, New York called Geneseo, which is 4,000 or 5,000 people, and there's a state college, and my mom was a school teacher. And so I was like a latchkey kid, as sort of everyone was in those times, but maybe more than others. And I was sort of a shy kid, and I was small for my age. And I quickly found out that some of my ideas and thinking were not very well received with my classmates and some of the teachers. So I learned to just sort of keep my mouth shut, keep my head down. But I always did really well in these standardized tests. But I remember so if you want to really get my attention, tell me I can't do something. So my high school guidance counselor took me aside and said, "Well, we're not sure that you're really cut out for a 4-year school. You should probably go to like a 2-year state school or something." And I was like, "You don't understand." So I decided to like, this is the guidance stuff, like, what do you do? How much money does different things make? And so were those two things, maximum money of like sort of, and my aptitudes was engineering. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna be an engineer. So I studied mechanical engineering at Rochester Institute of Technology, which to this day is still that back then, that was like joining the Marines. It was it was not PC. You got yelled at up at the board. It was intense. But I could do it. It was okay, but I felt like it was really limiting to me. I was getting a technical education. I knew that I wanted to sort of broaden my mind. I was reading a lot of other things and looking at pictures and stuff. So after I did 2 years of that, and I had a co-op job in the summer, and after that, I was like, "Oh, I really don't wanna do this." I was just, like, sitting at a desk and, like, no, that's not my thing. So I left, and I studied political science at Boston University. I tried to go to fancier schools, but they told me I wasn't smart enough. So I didn't get into Columbia. I couldn't get into any of these other, like, fancier schools. So I went to BU, and I studied political science because it had the word science in it. So I thought, "Okay, I can" that sort of parallels somehow. But it was so much easier than going to engineering school. I went to BU full time. At night, I studied photography at this little technical school in Kenmore Square called New England School of Photography, and I got myself a part-time job. And I was still out all night doing stuff because it was just compared to what I had done, this was just like nothing. So I started with photography. I think I got my first camera when I was like 6 or 7. I always really liked them. And then because as only a 22-year-old can, upon leaving school, I declared myself a photographer, and therefore I was. I started like right away working, because back then you had to have a real grasp of like some kind of you need to be good with technology. So you need to
There
understand.
was definitely a science piece to this.
Oh, 100%. There was like a craft to it. Like
Yeah.
it was, you had to understand the chemistry, and there was no autofocus. It was like there was a skill. There's a moat of a skill around it, and I was able to understand that easily. At 24, I think I had my first ad in Vogue, and then I moved to Paris. I think I was like 25 or so, and then I worked for the magazines there for a while, and then I came back, and then I moved to New York, and then when you move to New York, at least in that time, when you moved to New York, nobody cared about anything you'd done anywhere else. If you hadn't done it in New York, you were zero. So I started working when Andy Warhol had interview. It was like a whole that was a scene.
I bet.
So that was a scene. So
That could be a separate podcast.
that's just like, oh, dude, the whole Andy scene. And then I started working for the Conde Nast magazines and the Hearst magazines. Originally doing fashion, but then I moved into portrait stuff, and then I started making the money was in advertising. So I started doing that, and then sort of smaller stuff, but then like bigger American Express, Nike, sort of big stuff, and did a lot of, I don't know, maybe like a dozen covers in the New York Times Magazine back when that was a thing. And did much of that stuff. And so I got really sick. I was living in Paris at that point. I think I was about, I don't know, 40 or 50. And I was working sort of Paris, New York, LA, Paris. That sounds very glamorous, but what it really means is you are perma jet lagged. You're just like, what day is it? What currency? What's the language? So I got this weird autoimmune disease, probably because of the lifestyle I was living. And I spent the better part of a year in a hospital,
How old were you? You were between 40 and 50? You were in your 40s?
48, 49, something like that.
That's the
Um,
low point on the U curve of happiness. Okay.
well, yeah, I wasn't even thinking happiness. I was thinking
Survival.
like survival, like
Yeah. Yeah.
not bleed to death tonight, so that I can see tomorrow. And I was just a science experiment. Like it's like medicine's really greatly break your arm, it's great. You got some like weirdo my autoimmune thing was like it was like a pediatric thing. So most of the people on my ward were like little kids, or sometimes women get it after childbirth, and then there's like me. So eventually, what happened was I was getting these things called IVIGs, which are human. They're very expensive human blood treatment that I would get, but there's a lot of risk to that if you're getting these all the time. So, and they weren't working as well, and they always told me, like, the 60% chance of curing this thing is we take your spleen out. I was like, "Organ removal? That sounds Can we talk about that a little more? That seems a little rash." But then it was just like, "Okay." I give up after a year of this, and I was just, like, walking across the room was a challenge. I was it was so, anyway, I had my spleen out, and then, everything got better, but I realized, like, life needs to change. Like, so I left New York. I moved to Los Angeles, and that was better. And I started paying more attention to my health, not in a really directed way, but just like, what can I do here to work out better? And then when I was 56, I started the investigation that became Ageist. So I'm 66 now. So that was about no, that's I was 54. It's 12 years ago. Oh my God. So I started this investigation of why was all the messaging aimed at people like me this like really weirdly medicalized, infantilizing the couple with the dockers on the beach with the dog. They walk the bike because it's too dangerous for them to ride the bike. So they push the bike. Like it's just like, what is this?
Let me do a quick interruption because so your health journey was like what we would call the midlife chrysalis. It was you might call it a crisis, but it really a chrysalis is a time of transformation, and on the other side of that, something is better. And that is one of our basic, pieces of ethos at MEA, and you know that you're an MEA faculty member. So you had this midlife chrysalis. It sort of woke you up to your health.
This was not a white light experience. This was very gradual.
Okay, let's acknowledge it was gradual. And at the same time, as someone who has spent his whole career in the packaging, making people look good and the advertising business and Madison Avenue. And if in many ways our very ageist culture has a lot to do with Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And so all of a sudden you got this click in your head, this sort of epiphany, what we would call at MEA and Baja, the Baja aha. You got this sense that you wanted to explore this a little bit further. Why is it that we live in an ageist culture? Keep going.
So there was something that happened that caused this. So I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble if I tell you the story, but okay, I'm gonna tell you the story. So what happened was I got hired by Vice Media when Vice was, I don't know if Vice still exists, but it was sort of like a thing then. And so I got hired to do this job for AT&T. And they brought me on. I was 54 at the time. I was more than twice as old as the art director. I was like, I don't know, 30 years older than the creative director, but I was like definitely the oldest person in the room. And but they brought me in because they knew like I could sort of like deliver, like I could like do this thing. And nobody, it was interesting. They were, it was very like super hip, cool, but they were fine with me. I never got any sort of like, just like they just treated me like somebody else. So anyway, we did this thing. So it was for AT&T. It was an out of home thing, which means billboards. And I think we did 60 of them. It was a huge, huge job. It was like a seven-figure, like all around the country, so major thing. And so at the end of it, I, at this point, I'm just a photographer. So, but you talk to the people, you talk to the talent. So I say at the end, I said, "Do you know that 59 of the people that we photographed are on their parents' contract? They are not the customer. Like, why are we I understand they're part of the decision-making cascade on what sort of cell phone they want, but they're not the ones who buy this. Why? I don't understand." And so they said to me, "Well, we market to younger people because that's what we know how to do. And I said, but did you tell AT&T this? And they're like, oh no, we wouldn't tell them that. I said, I was just like, what up? This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. So that was a white light moment. That was like, there is a massive disconnect here. I need to understand this. So I did. So what I did, Chip, is I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And so I spent a month in this deep dive exploration of why this was. And I came to an understanding of why this marketing was done this way and why people do this and why all this money is spent for this consumer base that does not buy the product, which seemed lunacy to me. And so I go back to them and I say, guys, like, let me show you some numbers here. The people that you're marketing to, this is how much money they got. It's like nothing. These other people over here, they have all this money. And actually, they buy the stuff. Nobody's over here. It's all white space. We can own this. This would be fantastic. And the guy, he was an English guy. He used to work for the FT, really smart guy. And he looks at me and he says, that's terrific, but you're asking me to time travel into the future. I can't do that. We can't do that. I thought, I can do that.
And that's where Ageist came about.
That's where it started. That was like, and there was a lot more investigation and then thousands of hours of video interviews trying to understand, to essentially de-brainwash myself to understand why this was happening, why these people were portrayed in a certain way. And it basically just comes down to laziness. That it's just much harder to talk to people our age than it is to a 20-year-old. Because a
Well,
20-year-old,
why
it's just
is
like,
that though? I don't understand
oh
that. Why is
yeah,
it harder? Why is it
it's
harder to talk to us?
it's way harder because a 20-year-old is a monoculture, a global monoculture. They're all the same. Now, if you tell them that, they're gonna get pissed off. But they they know all the same cultural cues, they listen to the same music, they're pretty much in the same thing. What happens is as the demo gets older, it splits like radically on all fronts. So, like you and I at our age compared to like my wife's relatives in North Georgia is a different planet. You cannot talk to these people the same. So the fail that happens is in that form of communication to people our age is they look at this and I can't tell you how many of these like Stanford finance bros I've been around the table with who tried this. And they're like, "Oh, look at all this white space. Oh, we want it all. We want it all right now." But no, dude, you can't do that. You got to pick a tight lane because it's so different. And the fail was this was the huge finding that we did was that we could not understand why these really smart people were failing so badly. They were, they're using quant peeps. So quant is like, where does somebody live? What's their education? What's their income level, health status, things like that, to sort of put people into categories or archetypes. And what we realized was that's all nice, but what you want to know one thing and one thing only. How does that person perceive their physicality in the future? If you know that, you got the whole ball of wax. The rest of it doesn't matter. But that was the thing. And once we understood that, that sort of unlocked like the whole ageist journey.
Explain what ageist is, and then also explain in the last dozen years, are you happy with the transition or the evolution of the advertising industry? And let's recognize advertising is a whole different beast today than it what used to be in the era of social media, etc. But do you think that like Madison Avenue and Hollywood is getting it?
That's such an interesting question.
Pregnant pause. Pregnant pause.
Basically, Madison Avenue and Hollywood are quickly becoming irrelevant. Madison Avenue is irrelevant. Hollywood is a couple of years away from being totally irrelevant. So it gets tricky. One of the reasons it's much harder to talk to people our age is because we suffer from age dysmorphia.
Explain.
So I look in the mirror, I'm 66, I see someone who's 46.
For those who are not seeing David right now, this guy looks like he's 46. I just want to say he's leaner and svelter than any 66-year-old I know. We'll come back to that. We're going to talk about the health journey. But let me just say, in your case, it works. In my case, not so much at 64.
So this is one of the difficulties is when someone's 20, they pretty much feel like they're 20 because they don't have history behind them. As people get older, there's this funny thing that happens where the sense of our age is really volatile, and it depends on, did I sleep well last night? What do I look? It's just not a fixed thing, but in general, the studies that we've done, there's about a 20-year delta between how old you are and how old you think you are. So if you think, okay, so I think I'm 46. Do I want to see pictures of people who are typically 66, which is my age, or do I identify with people who are 20 years younger than me? So this is the tremendous challenge of, and in advertising, you see it, it's most acute in the beauty industry. And I whatever we think of what they're doing, I can tell you they try really, really hard, and they have the hardest job on the planet. It's just impossible. They are an impossible place. So that's one of the things. And so now Aegis is now 10 years into this. We started out sending a newsletter to 50 of our friends. Our grand vision was they would remain our friends. And now we have this, much bigger thing, this international thing. And then that led to what I'm doing now, which is Super Age, which we launched in November. And this is much bigger fish, much bigger pond. So
Explain.
I have over 1.2 million readers after 7 months. I have an open rate of 50% at that scale. Like nobody has that. And it's really about if you see people and you serve people and you do it in a trustworthy way, it resonates.
What's the difference between the two? I know the answer, but I want to have you explain the difference between ages because they both still exist, ages and super age.
Very valid question. I get this asked all the time. So Super Age wouldn't exist without Ageist. There was 10 years of learning that went in to Super Age. Ageist, by its very name, is against something. It's a real FU. It was just like, because when we started this chip, like the names out there were just like, oh, silver, golden, blah, blah, like what? Like, come on. So we just decided to just go like full punk rock, and it's like, no, we're ageist. And so people will ask me like, oh, that's a negative. And I say, really? A biologist is really their study biology. I didn't know. Really? So Super Age is not pushing against anything. Um, it it's up and down the age column because in the last 10 years, the things that we found were very important to people who were over 50. And mind you, we only show people over 50 in Ageist. 40% of that audience is under 50. And like
Interesting.
20% of it is under 30. So we realized there was this resonance up and down the age column because the things we were talking about were important to everyone. Like, do you want to live healthier, happier, and longer? Okay, that's somewhat universal. And that's what Super Age is about.
So it's sort of age fluid. I mean, it's across. It doesn't really depend upon your chronological age because let's be honest, we have more than a chronological age today. We have a cognitive age, we have a heart age, we have all kinds of we have a mindset age. So I think in the future we're gonna you go in for a job interview and well no one would ask what age you are, but the truth is you could be so many ages today because it isn't just the chronological age of what's on your driver's license.
Somewhat meaningless statistic. So like that, like it's a data point, okay, but it's not. It's like, what is your mindset? What is what is your view of yourself? What is your view of the world? I mean, I know 25-year-olds that have self-fossilized. Okay, great. And I know 80-year-olds that are like, wild, vividly creative and curious and like out there doing stuff.
And you profile them very well in Ages. So I just want everybody to know that it's a great place to see personalities and people who just are age fluid in their life. They're not defining themselves based upon their generation or their age. They're all the ages they've ever been or will ever be. So yeah, I think that we live in an era where the roadmap of the past that our parents had or that the world sort of put out for us doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, it's really people are on such different paths from age 50 and beyond. So I want to hear your story about your health though, because you say it was a long, slow process from your late 40s until maybe 56 or so when you really started leaning in to being the lean, you leaned into being lean and you leaned into longevity and you leaned
Yeah.
into really studying your level of knowledge. I mean, there's lots of famous people out there around longevity. Mark Hyman taught at MEA, and there's Peter Attia is probably maybe the most famous one right now. But you're in that class, and so talk a little bit about your own personal journey around health, because you're in much better shape today than you were 30 years ago and at 66, and also what you've learned about the body and the body mind connection, and what are some tips?
Well, I'll tell you the technical knowledge that I've gained, which is really kind of, when I think about it, it's amazing. Like, and it's all pretty much from the podcasting that I've done. So I've interviewed on my podcast like 200 of the world's leading authorities on, and so the nice thing about having a mind is you can learn at any age, and so I have learned, and so it's become important to me to really understand these things. And as you said, we're not living the same way. And as Mike Roizen's one of our friends, he's the head of wellness at the Cleveland Clinic. So it was like 20 years ago, he said 60 is the new 40. And now he's saying 90 is the new 40.
Yeah. Wow.
And so what we're seeing here is that we are not everyone, but there is a substantial and growing cohort of people that are our age who we can I mean, it's not delusional to think that you're going to live another 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, and so that for me was just sort of a slow, it was like I'd sort of learn more things. It's like, oh, if I do this, this happens. Oh, this is a better way to do that. Oh, yeah, don't do this other thing. And it it was just sort of, it became one of the things that I learned from, like, I've been injured. I had partial knee replacement 6 weeks ago. And when I was teaching at MEA, I was on crutches and I was out of pictures. It's sort of a little antithetical. I'm talking about mobility and health and wellness on crutches, but oh well. What I realized was the interaction between the body and the mind, and how much these things intersect. Because the our main publication at Super Age is called The Mindset. And the reason for that is, if you need to have the mindset that says that this is possible. And if you're a pessimist and you think it's not possible, what I tell people is, if you're a pessimist, it doesn't matter how much knowledge, the resources I give you, you're not going to do anything. You're just not going to do anything. But if you are an optimist, you will seek all these things out and you'll start finding what works for you, and you'll be finding a path forward. And one of the things that we did when I was at MEA was, I thought it was really important to connect the amazing MEA curriculum that you've developed over all these years, which is just spectacular. Like, much, I was like, this is really good. They are really good at this.
I'm turning red.
But they to connect that to this idea in one sphere, letting people know that they can do more than they think they can, and then connect that to the body. So there was one gentleman, I'm not gonna tell you his name, but he was there, and part of the thing was, like, we had a little step, and I said it was a box, and he's got 2 feet, and I said, "I want you to jump up on the box, 2 feet, just jump up, boom." So he's like, and there's a bit of a hesitation, and he's about 70, but he's sporty guy. So he jumps on the 2 box. I said, "Okay, great. 1 foot, right leg, jump on the box." He's like and he freezes. He's like, "I can't do that." I said, "Yeah, you can." He's like, "No, I can't." I said, "Come on over here." So I said, "1 leg, I want you to jump 2 feet forward." Okay, he can do that. Okay, now do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Okay, come back over the box. 1 leg on the box. I'll catch you if you don't make it. So it's not a big, it's about an 8-inch box. And he makes it, right? And so you see in a flash, his life just changed because he saw he could do something that he didn't think was possible. And suddenly, once you do that, you question all it just opens up, right? What are the other sort of stories that I'm telling myself that I can't do that I can do? I think there's something really powerful about connecting that to the body and saying, you're stronger, you're braver, and you're more capable than you think you are. Here, in the same way in the classroom and some of the other lessons that we're learning here about what we can do out in the world, emotionally or intellectually, business-wise, relationships. But if you can bring this other piece in, oh, that then it's like there's something about that little thing, Chip. It's one thing if you sort of tell somebody theoretically in a classroom, "Oh, you can do these things," but if you take them outside and you say, "Jump on the box." It's a little thing. There, it's just like, "Oh, this all makes sense."
That's embodied wisdom. I mean, wisdom is this thing you learn based upon life
Yeah,
experience, but when it's physical, it's even more tangible. It's like it's woven into your DNA almost.
it's immediate. It's like right there. I'm on the box. I never thought I would be on the box.
So mindsets are so important, for those who don't know it, Becca Levy at Yale has done research on this for 20 years, and shown that frankly, when you can shift your mindset in midlife about aging from a negative, so going from anti-aging to pro-aging, and I don't want to say pro-aging, I don't mean we just want to get old faster. I just mean that we see some of the unexpected pleasures of getting older, and we see some of the upside of what we can do to make ourselves feel better. If you can do that, go from negative to positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional longevity, which is frankly maybe longer than any of the current longevity hacks out there. Yes, I think the longevity hacks will catch up, especially as we get more testing and more data on it. But this mindset piece is so essential. So I think it's great that the magazine for Super Age is called Mindset. But you also have clients. So Super Age is really a platform for you to go out to industry and be you're sort of a pro a I don't want to call it pro age. What would you call yourself? I call myself a midlife activist. If you had to say you were an activist, what would you say? You're a super age activist. That's what you are.
I don't know. I sort of feel like I'm a spectacle.
You are a spectacle. You're very entertaining. What would you call
It's
yourself?
well, I think first of all, Super Age for all intents and purposes is a media company, and our job is to inform, inspire people who read Super Age and provide them with tools to add to the menu of what and trusted tools to what they can do. I will say that there are probably you're not reading the mindset if you're a pessimist. And you're not gonna be doing any of that sort of longevity stuff if you're a pessimist because why would you?
Yeah, I'm gonna die tomorrow. Yes.
Exactly.
Like,
I
why
could
would they
die
put
tomorrow.
these on
Why would I do
longevity if
this?
we're all gonna die tomorrow? I mean, so tell me a little bit about. So you studied this, in terms of what's worked best for you, if you were to distill it down to maybe 3 tips, whether it's sleep, nutrition, food, exercise, what would be some of your key tips that have worked for you?
So I look at this. I mean, sometimes people ask me to sort of stack rank these things. And I mean, you could sort of I mean, if you got to go to sleep. I think I sort of look at these more as a Venn diagram, and they all sort of intersect And when they're all functioning together at this, that center point is how you super age. And so the elements of the Venn would probably be sleep, nutrition, movement, exercise, stress management, and community purpose connection.
So it's sort of like the lifestyle medicine area. You're familiar with lifestyle medicine. So for those who are not familiar, to just check out, AI on lifestyle medicine, and you'll see that there's usually about 7 different pillars of lifestyle medicine, many of which Dave just talked about. But do you have a stack ranking? Do you think sleep's the most important of them all?
I don't care how much vitamin C you're taking. If you're not going to sleep, nothing works. You don't go to sleep, you sabotage the whole thing. But if you they like these things interact. You also, the number one longevity drug, bar none, is fitness. Like nothing comes close. I don't care how much rapamycin you're taking, how much NAD, whatever. No, it's it's fitness. It's what's your what's your cardiovascular fitness is measured by VO2 max. What's your how much muscle you got on yourself, what's your grip strength, stuff like that.
And why is grip strength? Let's talk about grip strength because that's become very hot topic. So grip strength is, I think, seen as maybe the most important proxy, or maybe the best proxy for understanding whether how you're doing with your strength. And why is that?
Well, it is a proxy. So, I mean, if you bought a tennis ball and you just squeezed it 10,000 times a day, this will not increase your life expectancy. But if you're doing pull-ups and you're lifting weight, you're doing all this stuff requires you gripping things. So that, I think, is where it comes from. I might be wrong in this, but I don't personally believe that having a powerful grip in and of itself, I mean, it is useful. If you're going to fall, you grab a rail, or you can, but I think it's like, it's something that gets dragged along with all this other activity. In the same way, the reason your cardiovascular fitness, and especially things like VO2 max, which is the sort of your maximum
Yeah,
ability to
explain
live
what
active.
that is, and
Yeah.
do you recommend that people ask their doctor about doing a VO2 max test?
Yeah. Yeah. You should. You should. I tell people feelings are not facts. Like if people don't die of heart, no one predicts they have a feeling they're going to have a heart attack, or they have a feeling if something's wrong with them. No, you need data and you need to back this up. So a VO2 max test is, they put a mask on you and they put you on a bike or something similar, and they put a chest strap on you, and they see how much, what your essentially your cardiovascular fitness is. And that is a very good predictor of mortality. And the lovely thing about VO2 max is you can make enormous improvements. In the fall last year, my Apple Watch said that my VO2 max, I think, was like 34. And I thought, oh, that's not very good. I got to do something about this. So I decided to put myself on a VO2 max training program, because, as you will know, the main motivator in David's life is to become the best version of David he can. So I'm an endless self improvement. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I was at a place in Los Angeles, and they tested me for VO2 max. And I want to say it was 48. So 48 is an elite level for somebody who's like 30. Now, mind you, as anyone who's met me, I'm not a super athlete. It's just, I'm saying this because you can make, like, if you decide to do this, and it's not that hard. You can make enormous changes in your physiology. It's one of those things, Chip. I tell people it's not too late. I don't care how old you are, it's not too late. I'm not saying this is easy. You need to take actions. You can't just watch television and expect for, like, this is something's going to happen to you. You have to do it, but it's not like these impossible Herculean feats. You can it's anyway. So VO2 max is a good one. Yes, your doctor probably won't test you for it. They probably don't have the capacity, but there will probably be some, like, little place in your town that tests you for VO2 max. It's like $75. Get it tested, and then you'll know where you stand. And what Atia says is, you want to be at the elite level for the 10-year span underneath you. Which, when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's really hard. But no, I mean, I did it. It's not you can do it.
Explain that. So for the meaning if you're 65, you want to be at 55. You want to be at the elite level at 55.
You want to be the elite level of 55, right? Because it does fall off like everything with age, but you can arrest this and you can fall off from a higher level, which is sort of Atia's whole thing, right? Like it's the things are going to fall off, but you get to choose from what level they fall off from.
So what's a longevity hack that's gotten a lot of attention, but you sort of laugh at it? You're like, I really don't think that works so well.
Oh God, how much time do we have? There's just a lot of. I feel like every day I somebody will send me something from TikTok or some insanity. Rather than talk about what doesn't work, it's like the stuff. Don't eat stupid stuff, right? Like just there's all this sort of like, oh, that you need to be a vegan, you need to be a carnivore, you need to be this. It's just like, okay, just stop eating dumb stuff, and that's like 95% of it. And the dumb, and you know what the dumb stuff is? It's what your grandmother told you was the dumb stuff. It still is. Like, just don't do that, and you're going to be better off. Just try and move more. Whatever you got to do, if you can get a strength training program, that's a good idea. I have seen, oh yeah, dumb things I've seen like cardiovascular fitness erodes your strength. That's dumb. That's not true. Yeah, you need them both. Try and figure out how to keep your chronic stress down. I'm very pro hormetic stress. That's what going to the gym is. And it's
How do you spell that?
hormetic, Hormetic,
Okay,
and I think
it's like it sounds. Yeah, I have never heard that
uh,
word. Yeah.
hormetic adaptation is so when you apply a stress, you you become impacted by it, but then you adapt to it. So this can be done, for instance, socially. So some people may be very stressed in social situations, but
Yeah.
as you continue to go into them, you adapt. And so then you become more resilient. If somebody dropped me in China right now and said you must learn Mandarin, I'm massively stressed, but then as I sort of adjust, I learn it and I just go to a higher level. And that's how strength training, raising cardiovascular training, all the same idea. So those are the good ones. The bad ones are the sort of corrosive things that, and it's the little stuff. It's like, oh man, there's a rip in the screen door. There's a rip in the screen door. Oh, I gotta fix the rip in the screen. And it's just like these like niggling things, or the financial stuff. Did I pay the bill? Like you got to find a way to ratchet that down. And some people meditate, some people go bowling, some people walk in the woods, some people, hang out with their buddies. Whatever that is, find what works for you and do that.
Why do you think it's men that tend to be fixated on longevity more than women? I mean, women live 7 years longer than us on average in the U.S. And yet it tends to be men who are obsessed with their length.
Um,
Excuse the expression.
well, it's I think it's sort of a goal achievement thing. So men are much more numerically driven by goal achievement. I know, like I am. It's just like, how can I, whatever the thing is, what's the number on it? How can I make it more? And I think women are a lot more easygoing about these things. They tend not to be as
Not as competitive. I mean, in some ways, they're more collegial, they're more social, they're more, part of the, women are so much better at social. I mean, men wake up in their 50s like they're lonely, but they don't even have a word for it, and they don't want to, they don't want to be the L word. And so the bottom line is men fuel that competitive spirit and like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So and any thoughts at all on Brian Johnson and Venice Beach? I mean, good, bad, indifferent?
I know Brian. Brian is the single most unusual person I have ever interviewed and possibly ever met.
Yeah.
I like Brian. I like what he's trying to I like that he's has moved this discussion more into the mainstream. It's very performative. I don't like that he's doing things. He has a very large audience, and he's doing things like getting gene editing at Royalton Island, which I think is crazy dangerous.
Can you hear that
Um,
thunder? And
yeah,
I hope everybody's hearing that. I mean, what used to be a beautiful view has just become a rainstorm in New York. So
I like Brian. I find him quite charming, and he's extraordinarily odd. To speak to him is, but I think he's a good guy. There are a number of people in this field, in the longevity field. A lot of them have a lot of letters after their name and are quite famous, and they are not good people, and they're up to no good. Um, I don't think you're going to get hurt doing anything Brian tells you to do.
piece of advice, and then I have one last question for you. The piece of advice, let's say an entrepreneur who was, I don't know, 35 years old comes to you, David, and says, you have a sense of like where longevity and health and vitality is going. You have a sense of the 50 plus market. If I'm an entrepreneur, I'm 35 years old, and I'm going to actually put together a business plan for something that really is reading the future, not something necessarily today, but something that people are going to be looking for the future. Do you have any suggestions for that entrepreneur?
I can tell you, and there's a lot of people trying to do this. They have not done it successfully, and I've talked to a few people that are getting sort of close to it. So the sort of holy grail is right now we have a lot of information on our bodies. So we have wearables, we can do a lot of blood testing, you can do scans, you take supplements, all this stuff. If you take this to a doctor, you are flooding them with information that they cannot make sense of. AI can do that. And so I think what you're going to see you're starting to see it. They haven't done it too well. Like Function doesn't do it very well, but there are others that are better that are coming out. So I think being able to make a something that's people will use, that's something that's compelling, where it tells you, I get a text or I get a phone call or I get something in the morning and it says, David, you didn't, for today, you need to eat this and you need to do this based on yesterday. And, having sort of regular blood work and regular updates. And this thing would also have a clinical level in it. That's where all this stuff fails at the moment. There's no clinical in there. So there will be some sort of a clinical level in this. And I think that you will see probably in a year, 2 years, something like this, and it will make your doctor's life a lot easier because the AI will be able to digest all this information in a way that no human can. You're gonna, it's just there's just like too many between your biome and your genome and all the blood work and everything. And this idea of actually personalized medicine, because what medicine is now, even if you get into the longevity stuff, the other stuff is just sick care. So, assuming you want to live longer, this is based on probability data distribution. And you see, data is generally comes out in a bell curve. And so they're going to say, okay, for most people, this is the deal. I can tell you, if you take 10 of these things, one of us is going to be way out on the tail of something. So it's this sort of science is really useful as a starting point. But on the other hand,
I hear the engineer coming out.
well,
The engine
it's basically useless because the only number you want to know is you, the n of one that is you. That's all that matters. And the way all these bits fit together with you at the moment is humanly impossible to understand. So it falls back into this sort of probability of like, well, we think maybe, why don't we try this? Then we'll test you in a few days. If you want like a $500 billion idea, figure that out, how to put all that together and then intersect with the healthcare system and get insurance. If you figure out insurance codes on that, oh my God, you got a gold mine. Yeah.
that is Maha. That's the Make America Healthy Again. That would be a very great initiative. Do you wear Oura Ring or like a wearable or anything like that? And what do you think about the wearables? And then I have one last question.
Wearables are great unless are an obsessive. If you have an obsessive personality, Somebody who is going to worry about what their aura or their whoop or anything is gonna give you on their sleep score, get rid of it. That's not for you. If you're not that person, these things, this is information. So my sleep efficiency is it's insanely high. It's like in the 95, 97%. But it took me a long time to figure that out because I wear at night I wear something called a whoop, which is similar to an aura. And so I know these are the things because you see there's cause and effect, right? I did this, therefore this happened. Oh, do more of this or less than this. And you sort of figure this out. And I think that tracking is about, as I said, feelings are not facts. So is my deep sleep more or less? Did I really walk this many steps or do I just think I did? Did I, where am I really? I think it's very useful. Again, for a certain kind of person, it's not a good idea.
That is so true. No one's ever said that. I've asked that question before. No one's ever said that. So that makes so much sense because I know some people who lose sleep because they're wearing their Aura ring or their Whoop or whatever. Yes. Last question. Someone 20 years, 30 years younger than you comes to you and just says, "You know what, David, I want to tap into your wisdom. I want you've lived a good life. Your painful life lessons are the raw material for your future wisdom. I want to learn from your lessons. Can I have tea with you next week and you can tell me what your wisdom bumper sticker is? That maybe a singular wisdom about anything in your life, any part of your life that feels like it has your wisdom fingerprints on it. And is there an origin story that's helped you to learn that lesson?
I would say, I mean, I think about the William James stuff about greatness.
You go back 100 years there. Yeah.
I will tell them the thing that you fear most is your own greatness and owning that greatness. And this is your greatest challenge. The vast, vast majority of people, according to Mr. James, and I believe this, live far below the limits of their capacity. And I would tell this person, you are doing that. So you can do incredible things. You can have an enormous impact on the people around you. You can do things that are far, far beyond your imagination, but you need to get going.
This sounds like David talking to his high school counselor. It's what you wish your high school counselor had said to you.
Well, this is my motivation. I will tell you, my goal in life is to embrace my greatness and to achieve it. Like I'm very internally motivated, Chip. I'm not that concerned about what people think of me. What I am concerned about is what I think of me. And if I think I am achieving my greatness, whatever that is, that's great. The thing I do not want to have, the thing that really motivates me is at some point I'm going to die. And I don't want 5 minutes before I die to say to myself, I could have been a contender. No, fuck that. I am a contender and I'm going to do that thing. And that's what motivates me. And I think that if a young person came to me, I would say, you need to get moving right now. You need to take actions. Actions lead to results. Life is all about test and learn. Go do some shit. I don't care what it is, because whatever it is, you're going to learn from it. It's good or bad. Okay, whatever. Like it's not going to kill you, whatever it is. So get out there and do that. Become useful. Become the best version of yourself. I mean, for me, because I'm motivated the way I am, but it's all about being useful out there in the world and figuring out every single one of us has this greatness that we can tap into to help other people to improve the world. But you don't figure that out sitting in your mom's basement watching video games. Like, get outside. Like, get to fucking work. Like, meet new people, take risks, start stuff. And you will learn things about yourself and about the world, and you can move closer to that greatness that you have.
That is really good as we get older. I think it's really good. I mean, that's a bumper sticker and that's a full manifesto, my friend. So yes, as we get older, some of us get really obsessed with being youthful, but at the end of the day, it's about being useful.
That is the name of the game. People, oh boy, you got me agitated now. So I hear this sort of stuff all the time. It's like, oh, I'm I'm thinking about following my passion. It's like, what the fuck? You're gonna like make sand candles in Bali or something? No. Get out there and get to work. Like, if you are useful, that becomes your passion. When people count on you, when people are saying, like, oh, I need you. Like, whoever it is, you're helping your neighbor take their garbage out, whatever it is. Like, that's the name of the game. That's what propels you forward. This whole longevity thing, it's not about putting numbers on the board. How long can we live or our biomarkers? No, no. How long can be useful? How much more usefulness can we put out there if we're healthy? I'm going to be quiet now.
No, I listen, I like the great ending. The fat lady has sung. You're no fat lady, that's for sure. But that was a great way on a passionate note to end. And you don't care what other people think about you, but I love you, my friend. Thank you for joining us on the Midlife Chrysalis. I look forward to seeing you. Glad that your knee is recovering, and I hope to see you soon.
Me too. Thank you for having me, Chip.
So, my friend David has just given me an idea, which is I want to actually interview him and do another podcast episode about his life with Andy Warhol. So, as a famous photographer in the Andy Warhol universe, I would love to hear more about that. But if I were to actually summarize the three lessons I got from Dave, one of them comes down to something he actually struggled with earlier in his life, which is this autoimmune illness and the fact that nobody could explain it. And ultimately, it led to his chrysalis, his midlife chrysalis, around the idea of exploring his health, his nutrition, all of the kinds of things that led to stress in his life, where he lived, etc. And so, in many ways, sometimes, for me, I had a NDE experience at age 47. It changed my life. I transformed myself, sold my company. I've had cancer more recently. It's changed how I'm eating. It's changed my perspective on my company in terms of elevating a bunch of people and a leadership team and having somebody as a CEO, something I never did when I was at Joie de Vivre. But MEA has a CEO, Derek Gale, who does an amazing job. So long story short is sometimes that health crisis is going to lead to lifestyle changes and maybe even career changes. And I think that was one of my key lessons in this episode. Secondly, I loved when he was talking about this gig he had, the multi-million-dollar gig doing photography for AT&T. And almost everybody who was there for the AT&T video and photography shoots were young people. So AT&T was basically trying to sell cell service to their customers. But instead of actually having older people, often the young people are on the cellular plan of the older person, almost everybody who they were actually taking photos of were young people. And so David was just like the sort of naive guy saying, why are we doing this? And what he found from the advertising industry was they just like photographing young people, partly because they're better looking at by conventional standards. And because the whole premise is if you can catch them early, they'll have brand loyalty the rest of their life. And David has spent the last, dozen years really debunking some of those myths, helping people to see that, there's most of the disposable income and wealth in the United States is for people 50 and older. And lots of young people are brand loyal for 2 or 3 years, and then they're no longer brand loyal. I just love the fact that his Super Age and Ageist products, these two companies he has, really came out of that, aha moment, the epiphany he had when he was on that photo shoot. And then finally, he introduced a term that I'm going to start speaking more, which is age dysmorphia. Age dysmorphia, the idea that you actually look in the mirror at 66 and you see a 46-year-old. The fact, I've known that for a long time, is that we underestimate our age, but to call it age dysmorphia, sometimes we have weight dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, which means we see ourselves as skinnier or fatter than we are. And it in essence, we have it's like going to the fun house at the carnival and seeing, oh, my body looks very different because the mirror is misshaping you. So we do that with our age. We do that with our age all the time when we actually sort of think of ourselves as younger, as if we don't want to see advertising for someone our age. And so in some ways, it's not just the advertising industry that has gotten us into where we are. where, in ads, you just see young people. It's also our own ageism, our sense that our aspiration is we want to look like and be like that person 20 years younger than us. So hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Midlife Chrysalis. This show is produced by Midlife Media. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform.